following program on Ada Derana 24 is classified for general audience. It is intended for all ages. It contains little or no violence, no strong language, and little or no sexual dialogue or situations.
Tonight, we discuss the developments and lapses within consumer rights in Sri Lanka. How can we expect the law to keep up with rapidly changing times and technology to better protect the consumers? A very good evening and thank you for joining us on Law, Land and Liberty, where we bring to you key legal concepts and break it down for the layman. Now, today's topic is something that is very relevant in our time, and also it affects you and me on a very personal level, and that's on consumer affairs and consumer laws in Sri Lanka. And we as consumers, it directly impacts us. And to speak about this very vast topic and to get a better understanding, we have someone that I believe is the most suited for this discussion, and that is Mr. Sarath, Wijesinghe, President's Counsel. So thank you very much for taking the time to come into our studios today and actually explain this topic to us a lot. A little bit of an introduction into Mr. Sarath Wijesinghe. He is the former ambassador for the UAE and Israel, and he's also a solicitor in England and Wales. He's also, to note for this discussion, he's the former chairman of the Consumer Affairs Authority as well, and over the past 20 years he has written over 12 volumes on foreign policy as well as textbooks on consumer law and plethoras of articles relating to the subject. So safe to say we're in very good hands when it comes to breaking down this very complicated area. So before we go into the discussion, here's a bit of a breakdown on how we hope to actually achieve a proper understanding of consumer law in Sri Lanka. First, we'll be talking about the fundamentals and the basics, the key pieces of legislation that we see in the country. Next, we'll be talking about the key lapses that we see and what we have to do to address it. And finally, we'll be talking about the future of consumer affairs and consumer law in Sri Lanka. All right, well, without any further ado, let's get right into the nitty-gritties of this topic. So once again, thank you very much. We have a lot to cover, but I believe before we get into any of those, we have to get to the very basics. Could you please start us off, sir, by letting us understand what exactly consumer rights entail and why they are important for the average Sri Lankan citizens? Specifically, can you explain in simple terms basic consumer rights and what it entails and why it matters in the day-to-day life?
Anura, the consumer matters affects everybody. Every citizen is a consumer, including you. When you are at Lyceum, at the tuck shop, you went as consumer. And then you didn't know, but you, out of your parents' money, you paid the money and got your food. But now you are different. Now when you go to Food City, you are careful. Because you have become a vigilant, educated consumer. We look at the prices and then you purchase it. So in that sense, every citizen is a consumer, and then consumer is unfortunately not powerful to the extent that other countries enjoy their basic rights. So that is basically what it is. The consumer is defined in various countries in various ways, but in Sri Lanka, its consumers is very simply identified as a person who buys something or service for a consideration, as I mentioned before.
Right. So moving on, I think there's the important point of what a consumer is and also the legislation that's surrounding consumers in Sri Lanka. Could you please give us a little bit of an overview on Sri Lanka's consumer protection laws, specifically if we can focus on the CAA Act of 2003?
Consumer protection law is a very tricky word. Now most of the media, they talk of consumer protection. There is nothing as such in Sri Lanka. The name is Consumer Affairs Authority. There is proper consumer protection in UK, EU and in India. But here, the Consumer Affairs Authority protects not only the consumer consumer as well as the trader. Regulating trade is their duty, is to regulate trade and also to safeguard the consumer, which is explained in the act. But unfortunately, this act that was passed in 2003 is we will be discussing later on, Anuradhi, is not changed still the same, and then it needs a lot of changes, and we need a proper consumer regime and an act. Simply. Next question.
We really have to get into the specific issue with the Consumer Affairs Authority Act as well, the Consumer Affairs Act of 2003. Could you please walk us through a little bit of if the current law is adequately enough or if it's outdated in our current context? Do you think that the existing consumer protection laws or the consumer laws specifically are keeping up with our current needs?
No, absolutely no. It's outdated, inefficient. If I go back to the history, we were very unfortunate that we had a good system. Of course, now our commercial law is English law, and then we had during our kings we had cellipies on this one, on consumerism, and also the English law was good. And then English law we made use of. Unfortunately, under this act, the previous English law was repealed. That I think it's a mistake on our part. But in UK, it's functioning well. But Indians took the best of it and they are using it well. So therefore, I think when I was the chairman Consumer Affairs, I tried my best, of course, those days. And then I tried to change the constitution. I tried to get the CAA Act, but there are a lot of issues and problems, and I couldn't do it. But now it is time for the current government. I think the minister is a friend of mine, and I have been telling him, but he is too busy. He was my friend when he was out of power, but now I haven't been there. But I think they must think of it, and I hope he will listen to this conversation and think of introducing completely a new act to cater with the current situation on AI age.
Exactly, yeah. Specifically the AI age issue.
Yeah. With the new platforms.
With the new platforms. I want to get into that aspect as well a little bit later on, but I'd like to focus a little bit on the 2003 Act that we have, which is the main piece of legislature when it comes to consumer affairs and its regulation. If you could, sir, help us understand what are the biggest shortcomings or gaps that you would have seen since the inception of this act specifically, and where it leaves Sri Lankan consumers vulnerable?
With the greatest respect to Honorable Lalit Athulat Mudali, the one who drafted with the best of intentions, with the amalgamating, taking from Canada, Australia and other countries, but not to UK model to that extent. And then what he expected was to run it with the consumer organizations and for the consumer to be consumer activism, which didn't take place. And also competition law, we will discuss it later on, which it did materialize. So therefore, there's a big vacuum here, and then there should be a completely drastic change. And I think we must follow the English. We must follow the English and the Indian model.
Exactly.
A mixture of all three.
We need a hybrid system, basically. Yeah. So we do see lapses, and that can be addressed if we can see a little bit more modernization with including different aspects of the law as well. Specifically, sir, when it comes to, this is a question of curiosity, of course, how well do you think our existing piece of legislature has performed when it comes to effectiveness after its enactment? In your opinion, do you think that it has had mostly a successful run, or has it failed with consumers?
I am very sorry to criticize the establishment that I headed, but it's a sorry state that it's not functioning properly. Mainly because I don't think there is proper leadership, proper thinking, and proper activism, and also proper assistance from the media. Not the media. I should say the organizations and the consumer organizations. That is the basic of the consumerism.
I want to get into the consumer organizations as well that we mentioned maybe later on in the program. But I'd like to ask you specifically, you mentioned previously as well, so that there were some things that were hoping to be included with the Act and unfortunately it fell through. If you could walk us through some of the planned features for specifically the 2003 Act, which was initially expected to foster healthy competition and also build that network of consumer organizations we were talking about earlier. Can you walk us through some of these planned features that didn't actually end up materializing in the existing Act?
As I've told you, we have omitted a lot, we have thought of a lot, we had a lot of expectations which didn't materialize, including in other countries. The prices come down due to competition, which is not here, that was the intention here as well. And also the power that is given here have not been properly used here and cannot be used here. Okay? And the expectations were not fulfilled here. For example, consumer associations, which is the duty of the Consumer Affairs Authority. And on top of it, I have to be very critical, I'm so sorry to say that, but nobody understood the real meaning and the intentions and the strategy of consumerism, which is coming from generations from UK, from 4th century onwards, and in Sri Lanka during our kings as well. You see, so that is a tragedy really, which we had to correct ourselves.
Exactly. So why do you think the law in the current context failed to develop such strong consumer organizations or even effective competition safeguards? Why do you believe, in your opinion, it has happened this way?
I don't think people understood the gravity of this and the strength of this. It was John F. Kennedy in 1961 who said in the Congress that consumers are the most powerful but the least considered lot. And then he the one who started the consumer associations and the World Consumer Association, and then we must be grateful to him for that. And then from him, UK, EU, they took special attention to consumerism. Like for example, now they are very careful now. Legal aid, there's legal aid. Why there's legal aid? That is, legal aid is given prominence there because then there's the criminals and the other they will be. There's a balancing effect. And here also consumerism also, that in UK consumerism is very academic. There are books and books on consumerism, and then they have analyzed and they have researched on it. Not any, and of course many countries picked it up. For example, Canada, Australia, even socialist countries, mainly India, they picked it up, and not us to that extent. But of course, we have a good jurisprudence on trade law, but we didn't take it that serious and important.
Exactly. And moving on, sir, assessing the Consumer Affairs Authority again, considering that it is the main regulator under the law,
one of the regulators,
one of the main regulators. How effective has the Consumer Affairs Authority in current context been when it comes to protecting consumer rights? You mentioned in one of your articles as well previously that the CAA has been inefficient with no teeth when it comes to enforcement of the law as well. What are the weaknesses and what changes would make it more effective for consumers to actually go to the Consumer Affairs Authority?
It is difficult, Anuradha, to say it with a few sentences, but there should be a complete overall, complete new thinking, of course, and new vision, a new strategy should be there. I think, to my view, the CAA, 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 the C what we have today, we have bring back the previous legislation, which we have unfortunately taken away. And of course, and also new developments must be obtained from UK, EU, India. So it's a bit of a complicated matter, but I'm sure we have. I'm sure if there is good leadership from, I know we have got a good minister of Justice. I think he will look, or Minister of Trade. I think they have to get together and do it, and I'm sure they will do it. And I have told them that I will offer my assistance free without anything, even to draft the new CA Act. I said I have told my friend. Hans is giving complete free advice. And then I think it's time for us to help them to do it, because it's a need of the hour for the people, for the country, for the citizens, for the consumers.
Exactly.
And trade, and to cost of living. Okay.
There's consumer affairs specifically bleeds into a lot of areas,
Exactly.
and so it's essential.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the legal aspects of what we can introduce in the country in order to ensure better consumer protection as well. But before we get into those specifics, let's take a very short commercial break. You're watching Lawland and Liberty. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to Lawland and Liberty. We're in conversation with Mr. Sarath Wijesinghe, President's Counsel, and we were in a discussion relating to consumer affairs and consumer laws in Sri Lanka. I believe we covered a lot of ground, so thank you very much for the previous segment. We got down some of the basics and the fundamentals relating to the Act as well. I'd like to move forward now with what we can expect to see as legal developments in the field of consumer affairs and consumer protection, so to say. The most interesting points of which is the case for a consumer ombudsman. In one of your articles, you mentioned that you proposed establishing a consumer ombudsman in Sri Lanka. If you could help us understand and explain to us what a consumer ombudsman is and how exactly that system would play into Sri Lanka, and if it's going to how much of a quicker relief can we expect consumers to get from consumer ombudsman's work in Sri Lanka?
Ombudsman is not an alien concept. Not an alien concept to us. We were with it, and then have used it, and we have been successful here, and of course in the other countries as well. In the Western countries also, ombudsman system is functioning very well. So why not use this in consumerism as well? Because it's a very easy, fast, cheap, effective process, and that can be established it's very flexible. I think, to my view, that's the best we could have it, and I think in the new Consumer Affairs Act that must be incorporated in the Act as well. So that will solve a lot of problems. Not only consumer, that will many things. Other thing is that might help the trade as well. I mean, the Consumer Affairs Authority, we have lapses on trade, on competition. All that could be incorporated here with the ombudsman. And of course, ombudsman must be a person who is of that stature. And then he could be a part of CA Consumer Affairs as well. That's my thinking based on my experience and thinking and my academic work. Here and UK as well. Because I was a practitioner, I have been a practitioner in UK as well on these subjects, on immigration, these foreign affairs.
So the case for a consumer ombudsman is definitely something that Sri Lankan consumers can greatly benefit from.
That I move.
Specifically for expediting the process of receiving justice in relation to any sort of unfairness that a consumer could go through in Sri Lanka's context. I'd like to move on that same note. So we do have, I believe, something that has been in conversation for quite some time as well, and that's the case for consumer courts. specifically dedicated to consumer courts. If you could, this reform advocate, of course, it has been in conjecture and conversation for quite some time. Could you help us understand exactly how setting up consumer courts in order to specifically handle consumer disputes will help expedite these processes?
You know, laws delays are all over, and then that is applied here as well. And then cost system is blocking everything over there. And then you must go after courts for everything, but it has to be there to be implemented. I think during my tenure as the Chairman Consumer Affairs, I started it in a small scale in court number 4, but it didn't materialize to that extent because there were problems. But to my view, I think if the Honourable Ministers are watching this program, please think of Maliga Kanda courts. That's the best for this, for the consumer courts. And also please think of India. As India, there are consumer courts, of course. And then also think of India or activism in Indian judiciary. They are very active, proactive. So therefore, those are the things that we have to learn, take from other countries, and I think we have to establish the consumer courts as well as the ombudsman simultaneously.
I want to ask you on the ombudsman's again, but before that I want to just get a little bit of clarification on an understanding that I would like to get, which is on how different we can expect specialized consumer courts to be in relation to the normal court process, specifically how it will handle issues with faulty products or maybe unfair trading practices. Will we really see that big of a difference if we have a specialized court system?
All those can be, of course, utilized in the court. It will be another court, but it has to be specialized. For example, we have to get other groups involved in it, health ministry or the police stations, health ministry, and very many others must be there. And then, but now it's scattered all over. But if you have it in one place, there'll be specialization there, and there'll be the equity, clarity, and also efficiency as well. So I think it's a thing that we should start. Of course, we can learn from India and start it. And I strongly moot consumer courts for Sri Lanka.
Exactly, and a little bit of a clarification on the ombudsman's as well. Could you tell us just how we can expect an ombudsman's presence specifically for consumer affairs to help expedite our process? Is it cost effective? Is it simple? How exactly?
It's very cost effective, it's very cheap, and it is very fast. It's a question of incorporating the ombudsman in the new Consumer Act and appoint somebody. That's it. And I mean, I don't think anybody will vote. I mean, it may not be very expensive. I think if you do it properly, His Excellency can appoint some, or you can incorporate it in the Act itself. You see, as an ombudsman. Of course, we have ombudsman here, but they are not very effective. We have financial ombudsman, we have insurance, but we have to improve on that, like the other countries. And you have to be a little bit creative. You have to give some power to them, to the proposed ombudsman, and the consumer courts as well. Of course, I think it's a matter that the Minister of Trade and the Justice must get together and discuss it with His Excellency, I think.
Exactly. We can hope to see some sort of improvement when it comes to the standard of care that a consumer receives when it comes to unjustness and unfairness as well. I'd like to ask you specifically, sir, now we did speak very briefly about the activism aspect as well and the consumer organizations. Can you please help us understand why Sri Lanka lacks such strong consumer advocacy groups right now, because we don't really see much activity in that sphere at all when it comes to organically grown movements when it comes to protecting consumers?
Can I go to UK? I mean, we have IT editorials of 110% here. If those who are viewing it, please watch WHICH, which is one of the most powerful organizations in the UK. So, which is so powerful that they moved, they organized, they advised, and they are in the main theme of activism. For example, if somebody wants to buy something, just ring which will give you everything. And also the product, the industrialists also making use of which, and which is connected to consumer organizations. You see, and that is how powerful they are. And I think that's the system that we can. I mean, we follow foreign systems. Why not follow this as well? But here, the act provides for this, but they don't make use of it. And the act specifically says it's the duty of the the CAA Act to help the organizations to organize consumer organizations. How many I don't know organizations have we got here? And the other thing is, our people are worried about human rights. Of course, human rights, we were the pioneers of human rights, but that is time for them to concentrate on the most important human right, that is the consumerism. The consumer, I mean, they are suffering. What do they eat? What do they drink? You know, all poisonous. No, buy anything on the way. Poisonous things are being sold, are being eaten, everything.
And we all fall into
everywhere.
We all fall into the subject of consumers.
Because our inactivism. For example, the consumer should know. I will be coming later on that.
I want to get to that area
later on as to
exactly. I think that can be the next topic that we actually breach on, specifically consumer awareness and consumer education. So, Sri Lankan consumers are generally, in your opinion, would you believe they are aware of their rights and how exactly to assert them?
Anuradhi, it's very funny. Sri Lankan consumers are a little bit hesitant, lajjakaariyo. I mean, they don't. They must very fairly, we must discuss with the trader, you see, and be friendly. The trader is not an enemy of yours. The trader is, we need the traders. No? The trader it's a part of our system. We need, and then, you know, that is there is a gata, Therivanji Gatava is very classical. Of course, in the other religions as well, as to how the trader should conduct himself, okay, and then it's an interaction union between the trader and they are not the trader and the consumer are not enemies, they are friends. You see. But
that's very misconstrued.
It's a misconception. Therefore, I think consumer education is needed here because consumer must understand how powerful they are, how poorly treated, how ill-educated they are, and also who should educate them, the media or the CAA or the organizations, okay, and the latest IT knowledge. Of course, they are equipped with social media. I think social media for their own benefit. Social media must TikTok and must take this over and do it.
Exactly. I think that's an area I'd like to delve into specifically as well. Can we expect, when it comes to consumer awareness and education, specifically you mentioned that there are certain entities and organizations that are responsible, that can be made responsible in order to better educate the public, the general public, the consumer, relating to what their rights are and what is entitled to them. Could you please tell us a little bit more about how vigilant a consumer should be when it comes to buying goods and services, and how that empowerment can actually be proliferated with the help of organizations?
I'm sorry to say that the consumer is not vigilant and not careful, and then not educative, and then I think he should be a little bit more careful for the sake of his family and the future generation as well, okay. And then who is to be blamed is the consumer authority and the schools as well. Now, for example, every school, every organization must have a consumer group, you see, and then schools must be taught. During those days, it was taught as civics was taught, and then home science was taught, but it's not so now. And consumers, it's a part of trade, and it must be taught from schools onwards. I think it's a matter that the Minister of Education and the trade must get together and do it, because that will help them, help the country, bring down the prices. And it's not to the consumer. You must educate the trader. Trader must be educated. You must say, look here, if you do well, there must be a country to prosper for you to trade. Otherwise, it's a dying. Now our country is a hospital.
Exactly. I think
it's a hospital now.
We have a very big issue there, specifically when it comes to, because consumer education and consumer awareness also plays into the overall health of the country as well. Because it is the largest group of people that we can see. We're all consumers in a way, and that's
all the citizens
all the citizens of the country are consumers, and that is why it is essential that we have to understand the legal expertise behind it as well, so that we are aware of what our rights are. I want to talk about the international best practices that we can see, and also on an international scale how we have seen consumer affairs and consumer protection being developed, and how far behind we are and what we can do to catch up as a country. But before we get into any of the specifics related to the digital age and also updating of our laws, let's take a very short commercial break. You're watching Law, Land and Liberty. We'll be right back with the final segment. Welcome back to Law, Land and Liberty. We're in our final segment in conversation with Mr. Sarath, Wijesinghe, President's Counsel. So thank you once again for the previous two segments. Unfortunately, this is our final segment, even though there's quite a lot more to discuss for us. I believe before we get into the future focus and also the digital age that we see right now, I'd like to ask you a little bit more about the fact that Sri Lanka is lacking in our consumer group, in our consumer demographics, specifically being a vigilant and sharp consumer, and also on this different side of the same coin, we see becoming a fair trader. Exactly. If you could walk us through exactly what lapses we see that it actually enables the fact that we do not have such sharp and vigilant consumers, and also there's an issue with the gray area surrounding fair traders.
I think it's consumer education, and they should know what they are. The consumer should what they are and what their powers are. And also the trader should know their limitations, and the citizen as a whole should know to balance, balancing the process, and to act accordingly. Because they do it for the benefit of themselves, their children, and the entire country, and the trade as well. So therefore, now for example, then the trader will be, if it's educated, of course, and then he will not try to exploit. He will try to be reasonable, okay, like Sri Lankan, and also the consumer will be very vigilant and alert. You see, it's a question of, when you purchase something, it's a question of where to buy, how to buy, when to buy. For example, now in the United Kingdom, if you go to Oxford Street, you can buy apple for a higher price, and if you go to the next lane, you can buy the same. It's a question of where to buy, how to buy, and then that depends on the consumer and consumer rights and consumers' alertness. Okay, so even in Sri Lanka also, now consumers are, if they are very careful, they can budget themselves, they can limit themselves. You see. Are not very extravagant, and then that is how they bring the cost of down, and that is for which the consumer must be educated, vigilant, alert.
The consumer needs to be aware and have the proper education in order to understand how to make do with the capital that you've got in order to prevent any sort of crises, specifically when it comes to unfair trading principles that they might come across as well. I'd like to focus on exactly what we wanted to discuss from the very beginning, which is specifically related to the digital age. So could you please explain to us how we can expect Sri Lanka's consumer laws to update in time with the digital age that we see right now. How well do our current laws actually address the modern consumer challenges? Are we holding up with the 2003 Act?
No, we are very far back. We are very far back, and we are not nearing. You see now, we are not ready for the digital age. But in fairness, we have penetrated 110% of the population IT. It's to our credit. But even the foreign platforms are now arriving here, but they are making use of it. But we are trying to digitalize. I don't think it will work now unless everybody tries to work together. It's a must, and that will bring it will be a solution to everything. It will be a panacea even for price, even for trade, or even for price, even for the consumer. That is a must that has to be done, and I hope and I wish it will be done. It will be successful. It's not now. We are now. So, for example, now when I go to a market, when I watch, I can see people using modern methods fast, but that's not good enough. Okay.
Our laws need to keep up with the digital times as well.
Laws and practices. You see.
Exactly, and for practices to be cultivated as well, there needs to be information,
yes,
and the Consumer Affairs Authority will be responsible for that.
And to get information, that's the most important thing, because it's provided from top to bottom. UN has provided, we have provided, internet has provided it. So it's for information. So go for information, learn information, make use of information. Okay.
That is the most important thing, to be knowledgeable about what you are consuming as a consumer as well. I'd like to ask you, sir, now relating to the international best practices, I want to touch on that as well. But before we get into that, specifically related to the judiciary and also legal professionals, how exactly do you see a greater role for the courts and also the legal community when it comes to advancing consumer rights, even before the new laws are going to be passed? For example, in countries like India, as you mentioned previously, the judiciary is very proactive with judicial activism and also public interest litigation. What can we expect of that nature in Sri Lanka?
In India, it's very active. There is judicial activism there, from Justice Bhagwati onwards downwards. So, and then we learned a lot, and we have to learn from them. UK, of course, and the EU, they are highly advanced. But in Sri Lanka, of course, there are new developments, but there are Sri Lankan lawyers and the judiciary, I should say, they are not they are a little bit, I should say, I shouldn't worse the lethargic, but they have a lot to improve on themselves, you see. But they are better. But even IT also, their knowledge is not very up to date. So I think these are things that, I'm a lawyer, but there's a new development. The new generation is coming up. And now, for example, you are in new generation, you are going to be a lawyer, and you have picked up, and you see my article, you have picked up and you have done a wonderful research on that. So I hope others will also do the same thing. Other youngsters also do the same thing. So those are good signs. Good signs.
Exactly. We can see some hope moving forward, but there are some serious lapses that have to be addressed as well. We have to keep up with the times, with the fast-paced movement of the digital age as well. You mentioned how India's judicial activism has served the consumer adequately, and how the UK also has good practices.
EU.
And also the EU as well. I want to get into a little bit of the specifics on the international best practices. Could you please give us a little bit more information on what lessons Sri Lanka can learn specifically from other countries when it comes to consumer protection? For example, as you mentioned, the UK system for protecting consumers is very effective, as we spoke about in the previous segment. And the fact that India also has judicial activism. What are the best practices in the international standards can we see brought to Sri Lanka? What are the most important ones?
Best practice I can say is UK. In 18th century onwards, there is consumer protection, also developed trade law as well. It goes, it's a balancing.
It's hand in hand.
Yeah. And it's a question academically, but we are also, unfortunately, we don't make use of it, and though it's available to us. But India has taken it, and India is better, very much better, even than Indian New Act is based on the English model. But what we did was we sent the English model away. I think we should bring it back to Sri Lanka. I mean, and at least a part of it. Now, for example, one more thing: price control. Now, price control, to my view, is a thing that has to be introduced in some form. You see, now the price control is now rice is an issue. Their price control is a long process there. But there should be straight processes where the price control can be created with what is in my mind is to with a strong committee of groups with consumers must have a part in the price control mechanism. Now it's all given up. What we can do is there is no price control, but you have to. Every item must be price must be exhibited. That's all. That's not good enough.
That's the very basic, the bare minimum. Exactly. I want to.
And one more thing I want to add. What they do is these consumer price authority, they go and raid people, and the punishment is amounts to lakhs and lakhs of rupees, which is wrong. You see, they should not be fined. They should be advised. They must be educated. There must be group classes for them. You see, so it's a completely wrong approach, I think.
Exactly. It's not just punishment, it has to be education
punishment
as
will
well.
Not work.
I want to, you mentioned a very important point relating to ensuring fair pricing, and also in hand with that is the tackling of the cost of living in Sri Lanka as well. Specifically, consumers, one of their biggest worries would often be about the unfair pricing and also price gouging when it comes to essential items. In your opinion, sir, the best way to ensure fair prices for consumers, is it through the Consumer Affairs Authority? Is it through the Act that we see, the 2003 Act? How exactly can we expect some sort of safety net for a consumer?
You have to create. There should be creativity. SEA can't do it. You see, Minister of Trade can't do it. It's a joint effort by the organizations, consumer, and a strategy, of course, and based on the new act, completely a new act. There should be a leadership, and there should be a lot of thinking on it, and it's not impossible. Get the best people. We have got people here and abroad as well to help us. Now Hans is coming to help. Hans Wijesinghe is a person who has now given up everything and come here to help. So there are many others who are prepared to come. So therefore, make use of them. Have an excellent act, and you can get the youngsters into it, young generation. They are very educated. They are IT educated. And what about the people? 110% penetration. So I mean, you can educate them through this to the
already existing platform.
It's a platform which is being used by them.
Exactly. And drawing from your experience as a former CAA chairman, sir, based on that experience, what were some of the biggest challenges that you witnessed when it comes to the enforcement of consumer protection, specifically in Sri Lanka? Did the on-the-ground challenges that the CAA faced, did it influence reforms, or is it still stuck in limbo?
Inefficiency of the people. When I go there early morning at 7 o'clock and come at 10 o'clock, but I see when the staff comes, they come late, they go to the toilet first, and then thereafter lunch 1 hour. Then Indian, they were very ready to go. That is one, and then on the other hand, they are not interested. There's no leadership, and then there's no strategy. It was difficult, but I still love. After 20 years, I still love, because I started loving what I've been doing, like as the ambassador. So I loved it, and I started working on it. So here, I think it's not a simple thing. It's a difficult thing, but you have to do it. It's based on, you have to be innovative, I should say, creative and innovative, and have a new act. That's the panacea.
Exactly. A new legislation needs to come in.
Correct legislation, the best legislation, a mixture of, not this mixture is not wrong. Now this is a mixture of Canadian, Australian, it hasn't worked since 2003. have a model with UK, Indian, and our own, of course, and our ancestral system. We had it during our kings as well.
Exactly.
Thames, there were Badulla Thames. If you can, if the watcher, those people who watch this, please browse the Badulla Thames in Sri Lanka.
We have an existing blueprint. We just need to be able to utilize it for the modern time and incorporate the properly existing tailor-made laws for our country's specific situation for our consumers. Unfortunately, our time is drawing to a close. Before we end this discussion, I'd like to ask you as a final question. Looking ahead, focusing on the future, what would a message be to deliver to the consumers and also policymakers specifically when it comes to the protection of consumer rights and also the vigilance of the everyday consumer?
My thinking, Anurad, is first I've been promoting new CAA Act, and then the Ombudsman, and consumer education is a must. Of course, strategy again, and then this is my thinking: a sharp consumer and a reasonable, educated trader. Trader must be looked after. Trade is not an enemy. So those are things that has to be, and we need somebody to have, we must have an organization like which is so powerful in UK, which is an organization. It's a private organization. I mean, if somebody, and it's very lucrative, and you can earn a lot of money, which is not it's a social organization, but which earns a lot of money. You see. And we must have a website. Please start. I'm requesting somebody to start a website. CA can't do it because CA is catering both groups. But somebody must some start it. That is, and I think our act that have been repealed must be reintroduced. That's my thinking. And then NGOs must interview. They must forget about human rights. We are good on human rights. Sri Lanka is okay. I mean, in all over the world, I have been, but we are the best country, and our human rights have been protected here. So don't worry, don't spend money on that. Spend on, if you want human rights, please spend time on consumerism. Media, of course, they are playing a game. Media must playing a great role, and you are doing well.
Exactly. Media and also specifically the education and awareness that is required for the consumer as well needs to be provided.
And PHIs, local authorities, health ministry are the others who should work with this in the group. And then
intrinsically.
And thinking, strategy, leadership. And SMEs must be promoted.
SMEs, obviously, the consumer, the state of the consumer, the country goes hand in hand.
SMEs, well, they are a group of consumers. Of course, they also can be, they can be
producers, which means the consumers will be relying on them as well.
One of the leading SMEs can start
the protection, the
awareness. You can, I mean, either say which or a similar way. Okay.
Exactly. I think unfortunately we do have a lot more areas to discuss when it comes to what we can do to improve consumer protection and the rights of consumers in Sri Lanka, and also the overall environment for consumerism in the country. But unfortunately our time here has come to a close. Thank you very much, sir, for taking the time.
I'm so pleased I'm invited here. I really enjoy this, and I'm very happy that you young girl, you did very well. You grasped my things very well. You had done extensive research. And then we'll work on it now. See. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right, well, we leave you tonight with the words of US President Herbert Hoover. Competition is not only the basis of protection to the consumer, but is the incentive to progress. Well, that's all we have for you tonight on Law, Land and Liberty. If you had missed any of today's programs, you can always rewatch by catching us on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Other Derana English. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good night.